The silent preparation. The world had been quiet for many years, quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Humanity had stopped sending messages into the stars, stopped waving their hands at alien civilizations, stopped pretending to be harmless explorers of the universe. To the outside galaxy, it seemed as if Earth had accepted its weakness and returned to its silence. But inside the hidden chambers beneath the planet's surface, silence did not mean surrender. Silence meant preparation. Deep under the crust of the Earth, far below the reach of satellites and alien eyes, there was a facility known only to a few. Its walls were made of thick steel, its corridors humming with machines, and at the center of it all stood a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was long, sharp, and terrifying. A monster of metal and magnetism, the Railgun. Humanity's first real step into the kind of power the galaxy respected. For years, scientists, engineers, and soldiers had worked together in secret. They were not heroes in the traditional sense. They were not standing on battlefields with swords or guns. Instead, they bent over machines, studied equations, and tested metals that could withstand forces beyond imagination. They worked in silence because silence was their shield. The galaxy believed humanity was small, fragile, and weak. That belief was the greatest weapon Earth had. The Railgun was not born from pride. It was not built to show off. It was born from fear and survival. Humans had listened when the alien council mocked them. They had watched when other species declared them too soft to stand in war. They had seen ships hover at the edge of their solar system like vultures waiting for a body to die. And so, humanity built. They built quietly, carefully, with the weight of survival pressing on their shoulders. Commander Elias walked through the chamber, his boots echoing against the metal floor. He was a man shaped by war, not galactic war, but human wars. He knew the cost of weakness. He knew what it meant to be underestimated. And as he stood before the massive weapon, glowing faintly from its coils, he felt both fear and pride. Fear, because once it was fired, there would be no return to the old world. Pride, because this machine was proof that humanity would never again be ignored. "Status report," Elias said. His voice cut through the air like steel. Engineers looked up from their consoles, sweat on their brows, faces pale under the harsh white lights. "The energy coils are stable," one replied. "Capacitors are charging at projected levels," another said. Each word was heavy, not because of technical meaning, but because every small success meant Earth was one step closer to survival. Outside the facility, the Earth looked peaceful. Cities carried on with life. Children played. Markets sold food. And people laughed without knowing what was being built beneath their feet. Most of humanity had no idea about the Railgun. They still thought their leaders were negotiating with alien powers, still thought peace was possible, but those who worked in the secret facility knew the truth. Peace was not given, it was enforced, and without power, Earth would never know peace again. The first design of the Railgun had failed. It melted itself after only one test. The second nearly killed half the team when the magnetic field spun out of control. The third had torn apart a mountain during a hidden trial run. But each failure made them stronger. Each mistake became a lesson carved into steel and blood. Humanity had always learned by failing, and this weapon was proof of that old truth. At night, the workers did not sleep peacefully. They dreamed of alien ships burning in the sky. They dreamed of children crying on alien worlds, enslaved because humanity was too weak to fight. They dreamed of Earth falling silent not by choice, but because it had been destroyed. These dreams haunted them, but they also fueled them. Every wire they connected, every bolt they tightened, every equation they solved carried the weight of an entire species. Commander Elias knew the galaxy was watching. Alien spies had reported movements. Whispers had reached alien ears. The Council laughed when they heard that Earth was building a projectile weapon. In their advanced minds, a railgun was primitive, simple, outdated. But Elias smiled when he thought of that. For humanity, simple things had always carried the greatest power. Fire, the wheel, gunpowder, rockets, tools that changed history forever. The railgun was just another step. As the night deepened in the facility, the machine hummed like a sleeping beast. The lights flickered, the coils glowed faintly blue, and the air smelled of ozone and burning metal. Scientists whispered to each other as if afraid to wake the monster they had created. Yet in their eyes there was determination, for they knew what would come. They knew one day soon the sky would darken with alien ships, and Earth would have no choice but to fight. In that chamber, surrounded by wires, steel, and hope, humanity stood on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. The railgun was not just a weapon, it was a message to the galaxy that Earth would not bow, a message that silence did not mean defeat. It meant patience, it meant waiting for the right moment, and as Commander Elias placed his hand on the cold steel of the railgun, he whispered words no one else could hear. "When this fires, the galaxy will remember us." The watchful galaxy far away from Earth, across the endless darkness of the stars, alien civilizations were not blind. They watched, they listened, and they whispered among themselves. The galaxy had always seen humans as a fragile species, too new and too untested to be taken seriously. To the mighty empires, humanity was nothing more than a child walking among giants, amusing to watch but never a real threat. Yet even among the proud alien races, rumors had begun to spread, rumors of secret construction projects, of strange energy signatures coming from the small blue planet at the edge of the spiral arm. At first, the whispers were dismissed, but slowly curiosity replaced laughter. The Galactic Council, a gathering of the most powerful species, met in their grand chamber built within a hollowed asteroid. The chamber was vast, with walls glowing in alien symbols and lights that shifted like liquid. The counselors sat in their raised thrones, representing empires that had ruled for thousands of years. And when the subject of Earth was raised, amusement filled the air. A counselor with silver eyes and a scaled face leaned forward and said, "The humans are playing with toys again. Let them waste their time. They are too soft, too emotional. They will never master true weapons." His words drew laughter from many others, but not all. There were some who did not laugh, a quiet few who had studied humanity more carefully. They remembered how quickly humans had risen from fire to space travel. They remembered how humans fought among themselves with a fury that frightened even alien observers. They remembered Earth's history of survival, where no disaster, no war, no plague had ever been enough to wipe them out. A reptilian counselor with golden scales hissed, "Be careful! The humans have a habit of surprising those who underestimate them. If the rumors are true, if they have built something new, then it will not be a toy. It will be a warning." His words were met with silence, because deep down some of the counselors shared his unease. Beyond the council, alien fleets also began to take interest. At the edge of the Sol system, hidden probes watched Earth, sending data back to their masters. They saw ships moving across the planet's orbit, carrying metals and supplies. They detected unusual power surges deep underground, and though the signals were faint, they were not natural. Something was being hidden, something that made the alien captains lean forward in their chairs with sudden interest. They had seen such signals before, on worlds preparing for war. In the taverns of alien space stations, the talk of humans became a form of entertainment. Merchants told stories of humans building a super cannon that could tear holes in the stars. Smugglers claimed Earth was designing weapons that could bend time itself. While many laughed at the wild exaggerations, the fact that the rumors existed at all made others cautious. The galaxy knew humans had ambition, and ambition was dangerous when combined with desperation. On Earth itself, the governments had gone silent in their communications with alien powers. They answered less and less, and when they did speak, their words were careful and short. To the galaxy, this silence felt strange, almost as if Earth was holding its breath, waiting for something, and in the silence of Earth, the aliens began to hear an echo of their own fear. The alien species most hostile to humans, the Kareth Dominion, saw the silence as weakness. Their warlords believed humanity was close to collapse, and that the time was perfect to strike. "The humans are hiding. one warlord growled as his fleet gathered in orbit of a distant moon. "When prey hides, it means they are afraid. We will crush them before they crawl out of their holes." The Dominion prepared for invasion, confident that Earth's silence was nothing more than fear, but in truth, that silence was something else entirely. It was the quiet before a storm. Not all alien leaders agreed with the Dominion. Some remembered ancient human words recorded during first contact, words about resilience and endurance. They remembered how human soldiers had fought to the last breath in earlier skirmishes with raiders. They remembered how humans mourned their dead, but always returned to the fight stronger. A counselor from the Arvel species muttered to his peers, "I have seen human eyes on the battlefield. They burn with something dangerous. If they are silent now, it is not because they are afraid. It is because they are planning." His warning went unanswered, but it lingered in the minds of those who heard it. While the galaxy debated, Earth's Railgun project continued in silence. But that silence now reached into the hearts of those beyond Earth. Each day, more alien eyes turned toward the small blue world, waiting to see what would come. No one could yet imagine the sound that would break that silence, the sound that would make the entire galaxy hold its breath. The first target, the Railgun, was not built for display or pride. It was not meant to sit in a museum as a symbol of human science. It had been created for one reason only: survival. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, the weapon waited like a coiled predator, silent yet alive. Every wire, every coil, every bolt carried the hope of an entire species. Humanity had learned from history that power was never respected until it was shown. And now the time to show it was drawing near. Scouts reported movement at the edge of the solar system. The Kareth Dominion, one of the most feared alien empires, had grown restless. They had listened to the rumors about the Railgun, and while some laughed, the warlords did not. They chose to see Earth's silence as weakness, and weakness was something they never ignored. In the Dominion's eyes, humans were prey pretending to be predators, and prey that hides must be hunted before it dares to rise. Their fleets moved with slow precision, their massive ships tearing through the darkness of space like hungry beasts searching for a kill. Inside the secret facility, tension was thick in the air. Commander Elias stood with his officers as holograms displayed the incoming ships, 30 war vessels, each one larger than the tallest mountains on Earth. Armed with weapons that had shattered civilizations, the crew stared at the images in silence, their faces pale yet unbroken. For many of them, this was the moment they had always feared. They had worked for years on the weapon, but now the question was no longer about building it. The question was whether it would work against real enemies who would show no mercy. Target selection, one of the officers asked, her voice tight with unease. The question hung heavy in the room. The Railgun was powerful, yes, but it could not fire endlessly. It required immense energy, and each shot carried the risk of breakdown. Choosing the first target would be more than strategy. It would be history. The first alien ship destroyed by the Railgun would either send fear across the galaxy or reveal Earth's last hope as a failure. Elias knew the weight of this decision, and it pressed against his chest like iron. He looked at the holograms again. The alien fleet moved in formation, arrogant and confident. Their ships broadcasted signals filled with mockery. "Surrender now, humans, and we will grant mercy." One transmission said, "Hand over your planet, and you may live as servants instead of corpses." The words filled the chamber with anger. Soldiers clenched their fists. Engineers looked up from their consoles with narrowed eyes. The Dominion believed Earth would kneel. But in that moment, Elias swore to himself that humanity would rise. The target chosen was the flagship, the command vessel of the Dominion fleet. It was the largest of them all. A monstrous ship shaped like a jagged blade. Covered in glowing crimson markings, it carried thousands of warriors, dozens of smaller fighters, and above all, the arrogant warlord who had sworn to enslave Earth. Elias knew the risk, but he also knew the truth. If the flagship fell, the rest of the fleet would feel fear ripple through them. Fear was humanity's true weapon, and it had to be unleashed in a single, unforgettable strike. The preparation began. Engineers rushed to stabilize the coils, their voices quick and urgent. Sparks flew from panels as power surged through the underground facility. The railgun's massive frame began to glow faintly, humming like a storm trapped in steel. Energy built up in waves, vibrating the very air. Everyone inside the chamber felt their skin prickle. Their hearts pound faster. The weapon was alive, and it was hungry. Outside in space, the alien fleet grew closer. Their ships moved into orbit. Dark shadows blotting out the stars, civilians on Earth looked up at the night sky, unaware that death hovered just beyond their vision. They saw only stars, twinkling and calm, but above them, war was about to begin. Humanity stood at the edge of its greatest trial, and the first target had been chosen. As the countdown began, Elias placed both hands on the console. His eyes burned with the weight of 1,000 years of human struggle. "This is for Earth," he whispered. "This is for every life they thought they could crush." Around him, his crew prepared themselves. Some whispered prayers, some clenched their teeth, others stared silently at the railgun as if it were a god about to speak for the first time. The entire chamber seemed to breathe together, waiting for the shot that would decide everything. The Dominion ships broadcasted one final message, their tone dripping with arrogance. "You cannot fight us. You cannot win. Accept your fate and kneel." But their words no longer mattered, for the humans were no longer listening. The coils screamed with energy, the metal shook, and light flooded the chamber like the birth of a star. Humanity had aimed its first weapon not as prey, but as predators standing tall. The first target had been chosen. The first shot was about to be fired, and when it came, the galaxy would never again see Earth as weak. The moment of truth had arrived, and silence would soon break into thunder. The countdown begins. The chamber trembled as the massive coils of the railgun reached their critical stage. Deep beneath the Earth, the air vibrated with the sound of power unlike anything humanity had ever harnessed before. Sparks danced across the panels. The hum of energy grew louder with each second, and the men and women inside the facility felt as though they were standing in the heart of a storm. The railgun was no longer just a machine. It was alive, breathing in the silence of the underground, waiting for the command to release the fury it carried. Commander Elias stood tall at the central console, his face calm but his eyes fierce. Around him, the operators spoke rapidly, voices filled with urgency as they reported numbers, energy levels, magnetic alignment, and structural stress readings. Each voice was a piece of a puzzle, each report a reminder that even one mistake could tear the facility apart. The railgun was a beast, and humanity was pulling on its chains. For a moment, Elias closed his eyes, remembering the long years of preparation, the failures, the sacrifices, and the endless warnings from those who thought it was impossible. Now, there was no more time for doubt. The Dominion fleet was here, their weapons already primed, their voices echoing through space with arrogant commands to kneel. If humanity faltered now, there would be no second chance. Outside, the alien fleet moved into formation. The flagship stood at the center, its black armor glowing with crimson markings. Each ship positioned itself like hunters circling prey. Their weapons glowed faintly, ready to fire. On Earth's surface, cities remained calm, for the people did not know the shadow above their skies. Only those within the secret facility understood how close humanity stood to destruction, and how quickly one command could change the fate of the world. "Power levels at 90%, one engineer shouted, sweat dripping down his face as his hands flew across glowing controls. "Magnetic alignment holding steady," another confirmed. The railgun vibrated violently, shaking dust from the ceiling as the chamber filled with the smell of ozone and burning metal. It was the smell of something unnatural, something dangerous, yet it carried with it a strange comfort. For those who stood in that chamber, it was the smell of hope. Elias turned to the tactical officer. "Target confirmed?" he asked. The officer nodded, her eyes never leaving the holographic projection of the Dominion fleet. "Flagship locked, trajectory stable. No interference," she replied. Her voice was firm, though deep inside she knew what this meant. If the railgun failed, If the shot missed or the weapon tore itself apart, Earth would fall in flames within hours. The responsibility pressed on every heart in that room. But no one turned away. The countdown began. 10 seconds until firing sequence, the lead technician announced. His voice was steady, but the tremor in his hands betrayed the weight of the moment. The chamber fell into silence except for the rising scream of the railgun's coils. They glowed brighter and brighter, blue arcs of electricity snapping through the air. Every breath was heavy. Every second stretched into eternity. Humanity stood on the edge of history. At the same time, the Dominion warlord aboard the flagship watched his screens with growing amusement. He sneered at the strange surge of energy coming from Earth. So, the insects wish to sting, he said to his generals. Let them try. Their toys cannot scratch the armor of the Dominion. His laughter echoed across the command deck. Cruel and confident. Around him, alien officers joined in the mockery. They had crushed worlds far greater than Earth. They had enslaved species with technology centuries ahead of humanity. In their arrogance, they did not see what was about to come. Back on Earth, Commander Elias placed his hand on the console. His crew looked to him for strength, and he gave it with his silence. He knew words would fail in this moment. Only action mattered. His mind went to his family, to the countless billions who lived unaware above him, laughing, eating, dreaming under a peaceful sky. They trusted leaders they had never met, trusted soldiers they would never know, trusted machines they could never see. All of that trust rested in the chamber now, waiting for the weapon to roar. 5 seconds, the technician called out. His voice cracked slightly, but he pressed on. The railgun shook, metal grinding against metal. The magnetic coils burned with light, almost too bright to look at. The floor rumbled, the walls groaned. The entire Earth seemed to recognize what was about to happen, as if even the planet itself held its breath. 4. The voices of the crew joined together, their eyes locked on the colossal weapon. No one blinked, no one looked away. Outside the chamber, alarms rang as power grids rerouted to feed the beast. Entire cities dimmed as lights flickered, their electricity stolen for the weapon that carried their survival. 3. Sweat poured down the brows of the engineers. Soldiers gripped their rifles, though they were useless in this fight. Old instincts pushed them to prepare, to brace, as if they were about to step into battle themselves. The sound of the railgun grew deafening, like the roar of thunder trapped in a cage of steel. 2. The Dominion fleet hovered closer, still mocking, still unafraid, on their screens. They saw the surge of light from Earth's surface, but they could not yet comprehend its meaning. To them, humans were prey, and prey could never harm the predator. 1. Commander Elias opened his eyes. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Firm, calm, and certain. Fire, he commanded. The railgun screamed. A sound that split the air and thundered into the bones of everyone present. A surge of light erupted as the projectile tore through the barrel, moving faster than anything humanity had ever launched before. The Earth itself shook, and in that instant, silence was no longer silence. It was the roar of humanity finally speaking to the galaxy. The shot that shook the stars, the instant Commander Elias gave the order, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the railgun roared, not with a simple sound, but with a scream that ripped through the chamber, through the Earth, and into the hearts of everyone who heard it. The weapon unleashed its fury, and in that moment, humanity's silence ended. A blinding spear of energy and metal shot through the barrel, traveling at speeds no eye could follow. It was more than a projectile. It was a statement carved into the fabric of the galaxy. Humanity had spoken, and their voice was thunder. The projectile left Earth with such force that the ground itself trembled. Cities miles away felt the quake. Glasses shattered. Birds scattered from the skies, and people stared upward in confusion. For the ordinary civilians, it was just a strange event, a tremor, a sound in the distance, but for those inside the facility, it was the beginning of a new chapter. The railgun had fired, and its target was not a test dummy or a mountain this time. It was the flagship of the Kareth Dominion. In the void of space, silence was broken by light. The shot tore through the darkness, a streak of brilliance that cut across the black canvas of the stars. On board the Dominion flagship, alarms screamed in panic as their sensors detected the incoming object. "Projectile detected," one officer shouted, but the warlord laughed. "A primitive slug," he sneered. "Fire the shields." "This is nothing." They had faced weapons before, advanced energy cannons, plasma beams, and missiles from empires far older than humanity. Never once had they been challenged by something so simple, so crude. They believed nothing made of metal and magnetism could harm them, and that belief was their fatal mistake. The railguns shot hit with a force the Dominion had never witnessed. The flagship's shields flared as the projectile tore through them like paper. In less than a heartbeat, the slug punched through the ship's armor, ripping its core apart. Explosions erupted across its surface. Fire spilled into space like glowing rivers, and the once mighty vessel began to break into burning fragments. Thousands of alien warriors screamed as their ship was consumed in flames. But the sound never reached the vacuum of space. The galaxy did not hear their voices. It heard the silence that followed. The flagship, the pride of the Dominion fleet, the ship that carried their most feared warlord, was gone, destroyed in a single strike. The rest of the fleet froze, their formation shattering as shock rippled through them. Alien eyes widened in disbelief, hands trembled at their controls. No one moved, no one fired. They had expected to conquer. But instead, they had witnessed something unthinkable. Humanity had killed a god of war with a single breath. Inside the secret facility, the chamber erupted with cries of victory. Engineers fell into their chairs with relief. Some laughed, some wept. Others simply stared at the glowing screens in disbelief. They had built it. They had fired it, and it had worked, against all odds, against every doubt. The railgun had done the impossible, but Commander Elias did not smile. He stood with his hands gripping the console, his eyes locked on the burning fragments of the Dominion flagship displayed in the hologram. He knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. Humanity had proven itself, and now the galaxy would react. Across the stars, alien civilizations watched. Some through long-range sensors, others through spies who transmitted the event. What they saw was enough to shatter their arrogance. A species once mocked as fragile had just destroyed one of the greatest warships of the age. In the council chambers, silence fell as the news arrived. Even those who had laughed the loudest at humanity now sat frozen, eyes wide with fear. "They fired it," one counselor whispered, "and it worked." The words spread like fire through the chamber, through the galaxy, until every empire knew the truth. The people of Earth, though unaware of the full battle, began to sense that something extraordinary had happened. The tremors had passed. The sky had grown quiet. But news spread in whispers that Earth's defenders had struck a blow unseen before. Families prayed in silence. Children asked their parents if the stars would still be safe. And deep in their hearts, humans everywhere felt a strange mix of terror and pride. Terror because they knew war had now begun. Pride because they knew they were no longer powerless. The Dominion fleet remained frozen, stunned by the destruction of their flagship. Some captains shouted in rage, ordering their ships to fire, but hesitation spread like poison. If one shot could do this, what would the next shot bring? Could they risk it? Could they survive it? Their confidence shattered, their pride wounded. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion felt fear. Commander Elias turned to his crew. His voice was calm, steady, carrying the weight of the moment. "The galaxy has heard us," he said. "Now we will see how they answer." His words sank into the hearts of everyone in the chamber. They had broken the silence, they had shaken the stars, and they had lit a fire that could not be put out. Humanity had declared itself, not as prey, not as servants, but as equals among predators. The railgun had spoken and the galaxy trembled. The stars themselves seemed different now. No longer cold and distant, they felt alive, watching, listening. The silence that followed the shot was not peace, it was anticipation. The universe had been forced to pause, to hold its breath, as if it too waited for what would come next. Humanity had fired its first railgun, and in that single act, they had changed forever the way the galaxy would see them. The galaxy reacts across the galaxy, silence stretched longer than it ever had before. The destruction of the Dominion flagship was not just a battle lost, it was an idea shattered. For centuries, the Dominion had been seen as untouchable, their fleets unmatched, their warlords feared as conquerors of countless worlds. Yet, in a single strike, humanity had torn apart that illusion, and the ripples of this event spread like shock waves across every corner of the stars. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, the air was heavy. Counselors who once mocked Earth now sat with pale faces, their luminous eyes fixed on the reports streaming in. "One shot," a counselor whispered, his voice trembling. "One shot, and the flagship was gone." His words hung in the air, and no one dared laugh this time. The arrogance that had filled the room only days before was gone, replaced by unease, a species they had called fragile, a species they believed could be enslaved at will, had just declared themselves a force that could not be ignored. The Arvel representative leaned forward, her insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "I warned you," she said, her voice sharp but filled with fear. "Humans do not break. They endure. And when they endure long enough, they strike back harder than anyone expects. This is their way, and we are fools for forgetting it." Around her, murmurs filled the chamber. Some spoke of crushing Earth before they could build more weapons. Others whispered of leaving them alone, fearful of provoking the same wrath the Dominion had just felt. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the Council, spies and envoys rushed to send messages to their empires. Some ordered their fleets to withdraw from human space, not daring to provoke the species that had awakened. Others plotted in secret, considering alliances, trade, or even covert sabotage. The balance of power had shifted, and every empire knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. On the worlds under Dominion rule, rebellion stirred for generations. Weaker species had lived in fear of their masters, bowed under the chains of the Dominion. But the news of the flagship's destruction spread quickly, and with it came hope. If the mighty Dominion could be struck down by humans, then perhaps freedom was no longer impossible. On hidden channels and secret transmissions, voices rose. "If humanity can fight, so can we," they whispered. And the fires of rebellion began to burn brighter. But within the Dominion itself, rage consumed the warlords. The loss of their flagship was not just a military defeat, it was humiliation. Their empire had been wounded in front of the entire galaxy, and such shame could not be ignored. In their war councils, they shouted for vengeance. They demanded fleets twice the size, weapons more terrible. They swore they would burn Earth until nothing remained but ashes. Yet, even as they raged, fear crept into their voices, for they could not deny what they had seen with their own eyes. A single shot, a primitive weapon, had done what entire fleets had failed to do. It had destroyed the heart of their pride. Back on Earth, the leaders gathered in hidden bunkers. They knew the galaxy's eyes were now upon them. Some argued for diplomacy, to show the galaxy that humanity wanted peace. Others argued for strength, to build more railguns, to prepare for the inevitable storms that would come. Commander Elias stood before them, his voice steady as he spoke. "We cannot go back. The galaxy has seen us. They will never forget. If we show weakness now, they will destroy us. If we stand strong, they will fear us. This is the choice we face." His words struck deep, for everyone knew they were true. Among the people of Earth, whispers of the railgun spread. Though few understood the full scale of what had happened, some celebrated, proud that humanity had struck down an enemy no one thought could be touched. Others trembled, fearing the vengeance that would surely follow. Families prayed quietly in their homes. Children asked questions their parents could not answer. And across the planet a strange unity began to grow. Humanity had faced extinction before, but now they faced something greater. They faced the entire galaxy, and for the first time, they believed they might survive. In the farthest reaches of space, species who had never cared for humanity now turned their attention toward Earth. Some saw opportunity. wondering if alliances with the humans could bring protection or power. Others plotted betrayal, thinking they might steal the secrets of the Railgun. A few even began to fear that humanity might not stop with defense, that one day they might rise to challenge the entire order of the galaxy. The stars themselves seemed to wait, as though the universe held its breath. The first railgun shot had not only destroyed a ship, it had destroyed assumptions. It had cracked the foundation of galactic power, and from those cracks something new was rising. Humanity was no longer silent. Humanity was no longer prey. They had spoken, and the galaxy had heard them, but with that voice came a shadow. The empires of the galaxy, proud and ancient, could never forgive the humiliation they had just witnessed. The Dominion's rage would not fade, and other powers would not stay idle. The railgun was a symbol of defiance, and symbols had a way of igniting wars that could not be contained. As Commander Elias stared at the stars from his hidden command post, he whispered to himself, "The galaxy reacts with fear, but fear breeds chaos, and in chaos, humanity must stand ready." The unwritten future, the railgun had spoken, and its echoes still lingered across the stars. On Earth, deep within the underground facility, silence filled the chamber once again, but it was not the silence of waiting, nor the silence of fear. It was the silence of change, the kind of silence that comes after history is written. The crew stared at the smoking rails, the glowing coils, and the fading energy that hummed through the air like a ghost. They knew they had done something no one had thought possible. They had taken humanity from the shadows of weakness into the light of power, yet none of them celebrated. For they knew the future ahead was not peace, it was storm. Commander Elias remained at his station, his hands gripping the console. His face was calm, but his mind was heavy with thought. He had seen war before, but never on this scale. Humanity had crossed a line, and the galaxy would not forgive them for it. The destruction of the Dominion flagship had been necessary. Yes, but it was also a declaration. It told every empire, every council, every predator among the stars that Earth was no longer prey. It told them that humans were ready to fight, and fight they would. Elias looked at his crew, tired but determined, and in their eyes he saw the truth. Humanity would not bow. Not now, not ever. Across the planet, whispers of the railgun spread. Families who had felt the tremors of its firing spoke of it as if the Earth itself had awakened. Rumors filled the streets. Stories grew into legends. Some said the humans had built a weapon that could tear holes in the stars. Others said Earth had struck down gods themselves. People did not know the full truth, but they felt something deeper than facts. They felt pride for the first time in generations. The human spirit rose with a fire that could not be quenched. Ordinary people, unaware of the details, began to stand taller, believing that their species could face the galaxy and endure. But hope and pride were shadows cast by a brighter flame, and every flame carried the risk of burning out. In the Dominion, vengeance boiled like a storm. Warlords swore oaths of blood, vowing that Earth would be turned into dust. Fleets gathered, their captains whispering curses against humanity. The loss of the flagship was not just war, it was humiliation, and humiliation could never be forgiven. Already, Dominion strategists designed new weapons, new tactics, new horrors to unleash. They would come, and when they did, they would bring fire unlike anything Earth had yet seen. Humanity had won the first strike, but they had also lit a beacon for every enemy to follow. In the council chambers, debates raged like firestorms. Some called for alliances with Earth, seeing in them a chance to balance power. Others demanded sanctions, blockades, or preemptive strikes before the humans could build another railgun. Fear spread faster than reason, and fear twisted into chaos. Empires that had ignored Earth for centuries now placed the small blue planet at the center of every plan, every calculation, every secret whisper in the dark. Humanity had become the axis of change. Whether they were ready or not, Commander Elias knew this. He stood in his quarters later that night, staring at the stars through a narrow window cut into the rock above. The sky looked peaceful, endless, filled with light that had traveled for millions of years. But to him, it no longer felt like the same sky. It was not just stars, it was eyes, watching, waiting, judging. Some of those eyes were filled with fear, others with hatred, a few perhaps with respect, but none with indifference. Humanity had forced the galaxy to notice them, and once noticed, they could never return to silence. The railgun itself rested now, its coils cooling, its frame scarred by the immense energy it had unleashed. The engineers already spoke of improvements, of ways to make it stronger, faster, more reliable. For they all knew that one weapon would not be enough. Earth would need more. Earth would need fleets. Earth would need allies. Humanity had crossed the threshold, and now they stood at the beginning of something greater than survival. They stood at the edge of destiny. Among the people, children dreamed of the stars in new ways, no longer as distant, unreachable lights, but as places they might one day walk without fear. Soldiers trained with renewed fire, knowing that their battles would not just protect Earth, but shape the fate of entire civilizations. Scientists pushed themselves harder, fueled by the proof that human ingenuity could defy expectations and tear down giants. Every corner of humanity seemed to awaken with new purpose, for the future was no longer written by others. It would be written by them, yet with this awakening came a question, one that lingered in the hearts of many. What would humanity do with this power? Would they stand only in defense, striking when threatened but seeking peace? Or would the taste of strength drive them further, to expand, to conquer, to claim what they had long been denied? The galaxy had seen empires rise before, and it had seen them fall. Humanity now stood on that same path, their footsteps echoing into the unknown. Commander Elias whispered softly into the night, words no one else would hear. "We have shown them who we are. Now they will show us who they are." His voice carried no fear, only resolve. The future was unwritten, but humanity would not face it on their knees. They would face it standing, their eyes on the stars, their hands ready to build, to fight, to endure. And so the galaxy waited, silent once more. But this silence was different. It was not the silence of dismissal. It was the silence before storms, the silence before war, the silence before history changes again. Humanity had fired its first railgun, and the universe itself had paused to listen. What came next was unknown, but one truth was clear. The day of silence was over, and the age of humanity had begun.